Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the No Cap Space Weekend Wrap. Look, this was not really going to be a post-game show, but then Iowa goes and upsets USC. So hello, and welcome to the Weekend Wrap / post-game show. What a win, what a day for CCFC, really across the board, from all across the board, from an Iowa win to the jersey retirement to DeWanna Bonner signing in free agency to the Indiana Fever. We got a whole host of topics to talk about today. Obviously, we're going to talk about Asia Wilson's jersey retirement as well. And DeWanna Bonner was not the only free agency signing. But before we dive into this game, have you heard about our friends at Homefield using code NOCAT15? Description, link in the description below. Folks, there's so much women's basketball stuff on there and so much genuinely good stuff. Man, Andrew, the Iowa Hawkeyes. This is a team that I know we had Jan Jensen on in the preseason. I know we left that interview being like, wow, we are sold. Like we are sold. And today, obviously, it's been a bit of an up and down, rocky season at times, the 5-game losing streak. But the foundation of this team has always felt to me that this could happen on any night for this Iowa team. And then you mix it in with the entire atmosphere and jersey retirement and everything. We'll dive into the specifics of it, but Iowa beats USC and pulls off. They were on the bubble with the bracketology from ESPN. They are now off the bubble. This is a massive win for their resume. Just general thoughts here on this massive upset.
Well, my first thought is to plug our friends at Homefield because the Iowa women's basketball team, it tells you exactly what today is. It is great to be a Hawkeye and use NOCAP15 for your first purchase. It is a great day to be a Hawkeye, man, because you knew they were not going to embarrass themselves when the God was in the building. Like, you can't under any circumstance, and you could see it from the opening tip, like the energy of Carver Hawkeye Arena, which, to be quite honest, has fluctuated this year. Yeah. It's a great fan base. It's always been a great fan base going all the way back to the 70s, to the C. Vivian Stringer days. People, I think, don't know the history of how good of a basketball state Iowa is. It is one of the OG 6v6 basketball states, like pre-Title IX, when they were not allowed to run 5-on-5. Iowa was one of those states where they had it on lock. Iowa Wesleyan was an OG program back in the 50s, right? And to see that crowd and to see that energy, it is the Caitlin Clark effect, but the underrated thing about the Caitlin Clark effect is the fact that there are decades of history that led to this woman and led to this moment, right? And to me, that is what was so special about today and why, as a team, I think they understood the assignment and understood the gravity of the moment of what this was, because this was not just a celebration of a player today. This was the celebration of a state. This was the celebration of a state's contribution to the game of women's basketball nationally and globally. There are, and we've written about it in Legendariums. There's more to come on the history. Howard Megdal has an entire book coming out about the state's basketball history. But Caitlin Clark is the center focus of that, and that's what today was about. Today was about Iowa women's basketball just as much as it was her being the legend that galvanized all of this support that was decades in the making. And from the opening tip, man, they brought it. Jan Jensen knew exactly what to do. They knew how to frustrate USC. Sydney Afalter played out of her door defensively on Juju Watkins, man. And I'll say this for USC. Juju has been in a bit of a rut lately. You saw it against Minnesota. This offense and this whole scheme in general we can talk about, but I want to keep the focus on Iowa here because this is about their win in front of their crowd. And to me, this was the proof of concept that the Jan Jensen era is going to be much like the Lisa Bluder era. And take Caitlin out of the equation. The Lisa Bluder era, for the most part, is first, second, Sweet 16 with the occasional Elite Eight in there. Like, you are a perennial tournament team. Right now, Iowa was sitting on the bubble, as you mentioned. They're not there anymore. Like, they are comfortably in this. A game like this could knock USC off the one line, at least for a small period of time.
Yeah.
But this, to me, shows that Iowa still has the top end to not only be able to recruit top players, but to also be able to beat top teams. Carver Hawkeye is still every bit the madhouse that it has been the last handful of years. And this feels like a major win for the program to say, really, to the world who might not have known what came before Caitlin Clark, that this is Iowa. Like, you may have had the God, but like, this is still Iowa women's basketball. And the tradition that carried and led to Caitlin Clark is going to persist after her as well. That's why I think this win was so important for this program, and why I think it mattered so much that it happened today and why it was so meaningful that it happened today.
Yeah.
But God, dude, what a win. What an environment. David Letterman and Lisa Bluter. This is, I can't think of a more like Snoop Dogg, Martha Stewart coded friendship than David Letterman and Lisa Bluter. What do they even talk about, man?
I don't know.
What an interesting duo.
Yeah.
And credit to Fox. I think Fox really understood the assignment last year with Big Ten women's basketball. And it feels to me that they know, and NBC to another extent as well, having the Big Ten, it feels like they know what ESPN doesn't when it comes to women's hoops. I think ESPN has so much tonnage of programming that, you have the NBA, you have NCAA men's, like, you play dollars and cents and you put South Carolina on the SEC network instead of having the ability to flex that into ESPN2 instead of Notre Dame, Louisville. Instead, you look at what Fox does, and Fox, is promoting Juju during the NLCS with the Dodgers. They care. They make sure women's basketball is the product. This was not on FS1. This was on Big Fox, FOX, and they didn't just bail out after the game ended and said, let's go over to your next piece of paid programming on a Sunday. They said, we're going to stick this all the way through her jersey ceremony, which is equal parts how important Caitlin is to the overall women's basketball media ecosystem. And Fox understands that. She brings the eyeballs. But I also think it's not one of those situations where, you have to invest to be able to receive. And a game like this and an environment like this and a broadcast like this shows what the investment is. Jason Benetti's out there. Like, he's one of your number one broadcasters for Fox. He does the NFL. He does major events. He does the MLB playoffs. Like, he is one of your guys. And so, that to me shows that when you invest in the product and care, this is how people respond to the product. And the fact that Iowa won it is honestly even better for the product too, because you want to tune in for upsets of magnitude on a Sunday like this. Juju brings eyes, Caitlin brings eyes. It wasn't an extremely aesthetically pleasing product for for USC, and we'll talk about that. But for Iowa to win, that component is important. And to me, this just what an atmosphere today. This was awesome.
No, it was incredible. To kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of the game itself. I mean, like, there's a couple things that immediately like jump out to me about what impresses me most about the Iowa win. That's funny.
We're gonna get that. Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry, Chad. We're Iowa first, but we're getting there. Sorry, I saw the corner of my eye. That was funny. Here's the thing. A couple things that immediately stick out. One, this is what you bring Lucy Olsen in for. This was the Lucy Olsen like legacy game. Like, if she does nothing else at Iowa, this is why you brought Lucy Olsen to Iowa. Was this game, and to end this game, 28 points, 10 of 18. To do it in, only 2 3-pointers attempted in this game. That is not her game at all with Lucy. It isn't. And so this is what you do it for. This is and like the it's all under the 3-point line where she operates, but the ability to just pull up or the cuts that she was making, like the variety, even though they're all 2-pointers, the variety in the way that she was getting buckets today was incredibly impressive. And again, this is why you bring in Lucy Olson, even if it's a stopgap between recruits. I know there were several big recruits there in the building today for Iowa. Pretty hell of a message to send if you're trying to get some recruits. But this is why you get Lucy Olson. Another part that stuck out big to me, I thought Hannah Stolke, before obviously she gets into foul trouble, I thought she was really, really solid today. And the way that, like, she was bodying people up. And we've had Hannah on here before. Like, we're very big fans of her game, but that's not, like, in the way that she was doing it today, it was different. Like, there was a little bit different oomph to it today for me. And again, not the tallest player by any means, not the biggest player by any means, but Hannah just works, man. And, like, this was, like, a fantastic display of that to me today. And the fact that Iowa had that production from Hannah, and again, I thought was very good, and then you don't bring her back in with the foul trouble because you kind of just start pulling away. And I'm like, at some point, you got to bring Hannah back in, but then it just kind of keeps working. So, like, why? I think Jan makes the right move and doesn't switch it up really at all. Like, why would you? It's working. So, like, the ability to kind of lock down on the defensive end. And again, this is not Caitlin Clark's Iowa team of how they're going to beat you. This is different. Now, do they have people that can score? Yes. Do they have people that can shoot? Absolutely. But their foundation is on the defensive side of the ball. And I was on ESPN LA's pregame show for their radio before, like, for the broadcast of this game, and I had talked about like Iowa 1-1. If you go every matchup, is there a defensive matchup that Iowa wins? I don't think so. Like, from a 1-1 defensive matchup. But if they play team defense, that is what Iowa can do. And that is what caused so many struggles today for USC, was the rotations. It was the help side. It was, you can kind of go on and on. But just the foundation, like, this just rang true of, like, this is what Jan Jensen's Iowa is going to be, was the way that they won this game.
Well, and I love the fact that things operated in a slightly different way. They got to the foul line a ton. They got to the line 28 times, I believe. Lucy was great at the line, but Sydney Falter, even shooting 1 for 5, 8 for 10 from the free throw line. And then Addison O'Grady, to Rob's point here, shout out, a Colorado home product.
There you go.
But Addison O'Grady, man, she's always kind of sat in that realm of being a role player, right? She's a senior. She has sat kind of in this place of, she can give you a few points here and there. But in this game, to go 6 for 8, to hit these massively clutch mid-range shots down the stretch. And honestly, she's had a nice, stretch here of games. Like, she went 8 for 12 from the field against Washington. She was 5 for 10 in that loss to Oregon. She's shown in different spots of time that she can fill that role on, as a bucket getter when you need it. But as you mentioned too, Hannah Stolke, man, it's just a different type of ball game from her. She is not just the track star run in transition, get you a bucket, kind of LaMelo Ball style. LiAngelo Ball not getting anything. But like LaMelo at Chino Hills, where, like, he's running the floor with nobody behind him and kind of cherry picking. Like, that was a lot of what Hannah did this past year. Now you're starting to see her in a more traditional role, and she looks great. And the other thing too is, like, what the reason we talk about this from a foundational standpoint, right, is I think a lot of people see that team through the lens of Caitlin and not the Caitlin, Gabby Marshall, Kate Martin, Big Nano, Stolke when she was a freshman last year. Like, I would argue that there was a foundation there that wasn't just in the sense of what they contributed on the court, but what they brought in terms of leadership and chemistry. So that piece is what you have to rebuild when you lose seniors. You need to find new leaders. You need to find new locker room glue pieces. You need to find new folks especially in the wake of a player like Caitlin, who is so much a person to be an extension of the coach on the floor and like is going to get up in your face and yell at you and tell you when you're futzing around and not doing what you need to do. You need to find all that stuff again, you know? And so I think that's the piece that we're talking about of rebuilding foundations for Iowa is that piece right there. And this is what we're seeing. They've been close in a lot of games this year.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much every loss has been reasonably close in one way or another. Like you have the 1-point road loss to Oregon. You have an 8-point loss to Maryland and a 5-point loss to Illinois, a 7-point loss to Indiana, 3 to Nebraska, and 10 to Tennessee. I mean, these are really good teams that ultimately are the difference between being, 8-2 in conference and, being 17-4 versus being 15-7. But even still, this is probably one of the scarier first round teams you might come across come NCAA tournament time. And dude, like, you're right. This is what you go get Lucy Olson for. This is what everybody was so excited about when it was announced that she was going to transfer to Iowa. We knew it wasn't going to be the same because she's not the same kind of player stylistically, but you knew that like a 28-point outing in the clutch in a major moment, that's absolutely in her DNA. And that's what they were able to get. So, a huge win for Iowa. Really love it for them. But dog,
let's pivot. Let's get to it. Let's talk about USC.
We got to have some hard conversations about our faves, man.
Look, I mean, realistically, the dialogue on social media and everything has been surrounded, and in our chat as we previously side-eye just in the corner of our eyes, has been about Lindsey Gottlieb and the system and the ease of production in this system. And again, it's different from last year in the sense of personnel and what your personnel are capable of doing just kind of naturally based on their skill sets, and most specifically the spacing that last year's team had that this team just doesn't really when you lose Mackenzie Forbes and the rest of the Ivies. Where are you at with USC right now? Because we had this conversation that USC was one of the teams that we felt had an argument that they had to prove it in February on Ball Up Top, our weekly podcast that drops every Tuesday. So like we've had this conversation of like, okay, like USC, like we know you are talented, but you got to go get those wins now. And this is not the way you wanted to start February at all.
No. I will say this to start. The discussion about, let Juju declare early for the WNBA was presumptuous at the time, and you see why now. That's a different league, bro. It is. There is no 18-year-old player in the world that is ready to step in and be a day one star in that league. There is not a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old that is ready for that just yet. And the talk back then was early. The talk here is early because she's got growing to do. Because here's the thing. I will grant this. Yeah, they're still right up at the top of the Big Ten with UCLA, right? Juju still got hers, but it's not necessarily in the fact that she gets hers, it's in how we're watching it happen. And the thing that I am noticing more and more in recent games is there is a pressing from her that runs very counter to what her greatest attribute is on the floor, which is her patience. The best thing about Juju Watkins is her patience and ability to react to what her defender does. Her patience in the air, her patience with the ball in her hand. You are seeing her rush. And to me, that's alarming because that indicates on some level a lack of trust in the system and where we are going with some of this stuff. Some of it is also a little young, right? There is still like a youth component there, but that's what you hope to alleviate when you brought in Talia von Oelhoffen and Kiki Iriafen and had Rhea Marshall coming back. The thing that concerns me about USC in the long term, because yes, like all this stuff is regular season and there's window dressing components, but dude, this stuff all matters because it teaches you lessons about what you're going to see when you get later into your schedule down the road. And what we're learning right now is force everyone else to beat you. Put one good-ass defender on Juju and see how it goes with everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's my major concern. The philosophy of this team is read and react. And the philosophy of this team is letting your stars do star shit. But in the college level, dude, that doesn't work. Systems win you national championships, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the last time we have seen a singular player win a title, not just get to a championship, but win a title, probably Cheryl Swoops in 93.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the last time a singular player has essentially done it on their own. The rest of the way, especially since 2000, it's been Gino's system. It's been Kim Mulkey's system. It's been Pat Summitt's system. It's been Muffet McGraw's system, Dawn Staley's system, Tara Vanderveer's system. Like, those are the people that are winning these things. And you can still be a star in those systems. Lisa Bluter had a system. You know, like that, a lot of people conflate what Caitlin did with like it was the Caitlin show. Bluter had a system that went back years, you know, and my concern right now is I don't know what USC's system is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I don't know when there's 2 minutes left and you're in the clutch. I don't know what you're calling.
That's where I'm at.
Know, and there's a limit to some of these things, right? Like Oregon State, for instance, is a great example of this. A team that is too rigid in some respects, like the system is you go up the floor and Scott Ruick tells you what the play is and you do it every single possession. But that's the extreme. And on the other end of the spectrum is USC, in which, as Joe mentions, they don't have sets. I don't watch sets. I watch them figure out, all right, maybe we throw a pick here. But like, there's no off-ball movement. There is no additional secondary screens. Like, there's not the shit you need to get you out of the jam. Mm-hmm. Getting you out of the jam is letting Juju just cook. And as we're seeing, there is a limit to that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, and Kiki, for as good as she is, I think Kiki also isn't Lauren Betts at 6'7". Like, she's not someone that can just impose off size alone. And so if she matches up against a good or big or better defender, she's not going to be that type of person, you know? And so I don't know, man. I want to root for this team. I was starting to wonder last week if they were like the LSU of this year, where I was just like, they look like they suck, and then I'm going to wake up in April and they're going to be holding a national title. But, you know, a loss like this and the way in which they lost shakes that component a little bit here. And look, nobody's saying Katie Lou Samuelson is a better baller than Juju Watkins, but the discussion about it was like Juju could go into the league now and be fine. No. No, she probably could not. It would take a year. And I think we're going to – I worry about us doing this with Caitlin in that sense, where because Caitlin's done it, the assumption is every subsequent star is going to do it. Dog, I think history is going to show us Caitlin is one of one, and it's just that's the way it's going to be. But USC, I think I am extremely worried about what this looks like beyond the play style stuff, because you're watching Juju get frustrated.
Yeah.
And that's what I started to notice tonight. I picked it up a little bit in that Minnesota game and kind of wrote it off like she was frustrated with herself for a bad shooting night. But there's general frustration about what is going on now. Like, I know this is like Bill Simmons body language doctor shit, but like it looks like they're not hitting it doesn't look like they're hitting their ceiling in any of the games they're playing.
No.
And I think that's a concern, because at some point against a top end team, you have to see a team operate at their ceiling. And so far they've played Notre Dame, UConn, Michigan, Maryland as like their top 25. I know Michigan's not in that anymore, but they were 23 at the time. I don't really think I saw USC's style like at its ceiling in any of those games.
No.
And we saw USC ceiling last year. Like, we saw those types of games last year. We are over halfway through the season. We haven't seen it with SC yet. So maybe this is the kind of loss that triggers a change, and that can always happen. And maybe this is the thing that like shocks your coaches kind of into submission to be like, we got to do something a little different. Maybe you sit down Juju and say you got to do something a little different. Maybe you sit down Talia and say, hey, maybe we need you to come off the bench and we put Avery Howell or Heckle in that starting role. But dude, something's got to be changed because I feel like it's just come around. It's come around.
Mm-hmm.
Like they fucked around and now they're finding out, or they found out, I guess, today. And if you don't make the change soon, you're going to run into some real issues by the time we hit March, because I love this team. I think they're great. I think they're fun. And I'm a West Coast guy. Like, I like watching West Coast teams do well. I would hate to see this for Juju, like for them to just eat it. And then we start talking about her as an overrated player, because that's where it's going to go next. If we have more performances like this where she's being let down either by the schematic or the people around her in that process.
Yeah, I know the thing that stuck out to me from what you just said that like rang true to me is like, I don't know what the plan is when things go wrong. And again, you made the point of like 2 minutes left. What do you go to? It seems like the plan is get the ball to Juju, and like that's it. Like that's the plan. Like that is the extent of it. And that's what worries me. And I've been big on trying to work these freshmen into the rotation and the game plan more and more. Because I mean, Howell and Heckle have been fantastic on and I've loved like the different variables that they bring, and Kennedy Smith obviously as well in the starting role. Like, and I fear that this is kind of where not doing that earlier in the season is going to hurt more. Because like you kind of mentioned it, like, okay, if you put your best defender on Juju and anytime she goes in the mid-range, you collapse on Juju, as you should, like, makes sense. And like how have you prepared the others on this team to then contribute? And I don't feel like we've seen that preparation. And again, obviously, this is an insane atmosphere in Iowa, and the like everything going on with this game. Like, Iowa played their best basketball today as well. Like, I like for in general, outside of like when they were pressing, which I was kind of surprised they also let off the press because they were giving Iowa fits with that. But like I'm thinking about this plan versus UCLA. That
who by the way is fucking burying Minnesota right now. Yeah, like they're up 26 in the fourth.
Like those,
and like everyone's scoring. It's just, it's different. It's a totally different type of game.
Yeah, and so like when you get to the Elite Eight and farther, like, and you're playing against those caliber of teams, where like you don't really get a chance to make mistakes for real. Like, like there's not a lot of wiggle room for that.
I mean, dude, this is what happened to them last year. They went to the Elite Eight against UConn, and Gino just stuck Nika Mule on Juju and said, I'm going to frustrate the shit out of you with one of the best, defenders, and let's see what everybody else can do and what Lindsay can do. And, I'm a big believer in Lindsay. I think that she has the chops, but I think what worries me a little bit is what are you and what have you sacrificed for this player, and that's not to say that like Juju runs the show here, but I do think like there are limits and lines to being a player's coach in that respect. People tag Dawn a lot as like a player's coach. Dawn might be a player supportive coach. Dawn Staley is a fucking coach. Like, she will, and every South Carolina fan will tell you this, dog. She will get on your ass if you are not playing well. If you are not doing the right things, she will be on your ass until you get better. And I wonder how much of that exists in a place like USC. And that's the thing that I am curious is, are you holding players accountable enough, or are you trying to go and make your players be the ones to kind of pull people up? It's possible to do that, but it requires a whole hell of a lot more talent, than what you have, or at least the talent that you have to be a little older than it is.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Look, there is no one. I want to be clear here.
Yeah.
No one is debating whether or not Juju Watkins is a great player. I'm not there is not a concern about her and getting hers, but it's a concern about how much can you win and how much can we take you seriously as a title contender when it's looked like this all season. And the name of the game can't always be Juju bail us out or Kiki bail us out, like it wasn't against Minnesota, because that was the Kiki bailout. I don't want to write epitaphs here, especially given that this is only their second loss of the season, and the other one was to Notre Dame, who is like basically on the same level as they are, if not better.
Yep.
And there's other components too, like some of the counting stats, some of the advanced metrics that are vital and important. Like for everything we're saying, like Juju shot better this year in every metric.
Yeah.
Even scoring less and sharing more. Not to mention Kiki kind of in the same boat. Like Kiki's numbers are up across the board here. But it just feels worrisome for them as a national championship level team.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair. Like, I think it's fair when the discussion about you all year has been, are you a national championship team, for us to see a loss like this and wonder that. No one's saying they suck and now they're going to get fucking upset by UC Irvine in a 116 or a 215 matchup. But it does make me wonder, if you're in the Elite Eight and you see UConn, like, do I have the faith in you that I had maybe 2 months ago? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure, because this has been bubbling up for a while, and it's going to, unless we see substantial changes. I don't necessarily think that they're going to drop all that far in the rankings.
No.
I think again, AP poll will AP poll, but like, I think if you are a smart pollster, this speaks better on Iowa than it speaks poorly on SC. With that said, I'd probably put SC, if I had a vote in the AP poll, I'd probably put them down around 7, and I would probably put Iowa around like 24. So, and look, and this is the argument too. Like, I want to put up their Sinister Aristotle, which that feels like it could be a great Twitter account. But anyway, but like, this is what I mean, because I feel like sometimes when we do critique in the women's basketball space, it sometimes gets construed as like, you're saying this player sucks and get off their ass. Like, they're, we circle the wagons on folks, and understandable, because it's 35 years of, saying women can't play basketball, that you circle the wagons on any degree of critique. But I think we're at a point now in the game where we can have those sort of minutia critiques, where we're not saying a player's bad, but you can say, if the sales pitch on Juju was that she was the next one or is the next one, then you have to judge her on the standard of being the next one. If USC was billed as a national title contender this year, you have to grade them on the standard of being a national title contender. Same way we do with LSU, same way we do with UConn, same way we do with South Carolina and Notre Dame. It all goes into the same boat. We're not saying they're bad, but we're saying that there is still a standard here. And I'm going to say this. Yes, she's dope. 27 points on 8 of 22 shooting is not a super efficient night. It's not. And there's also eye test component stuff here that we have to watch with the game too, because there are, like, we all watched the same game. She kept them in it, and there is no denying that. But she did not have a great game in her own right. She still went 1 of 7 from 3. And I know that's not necessarily like where she is as a player. But yes, we are going to grade her on the standard, because this is not just us that have said that she is next. Everybody has billed her as next. That's where we hold the standard, man. The standard is the standard. Point blank, period. That's still, like, they're still great. She's still great. but we can critique honestly for these players.
Yeah. I do want to move on to the jersey retirements. One last point I did kind of want to hit on. The thing that's kind of been ringing in my mind the past couple days, as we saw, now this game especially, has kind of like amplified it. I was at the Pac-12 tournament last year, boots on the ground. You remember who won Pac-12 tournament player of the tournament?
Was it Forbes or was it Juju?
It was Mackenzie Forbes.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And being there and watching, I think it was 26 points, I think, in that game against Stanford in the championship game. Like, who do you trust right now to go be your Forbes? And that's my worry. Because the gravity that Juju brings on, like, you see the defense collapse on it. I kind of touched on it with the freshmen and everything. I don't know if they have their Forbes. And it doesn't mean having a star player next to Juju.
Mm-hmm.
Kiki is that. And Kiki can go and get her in her own way. But when it comes to the gravity that Juju brings in your kickouts, you don't have that. And,
you need another guard with her.
Yeah, and right now that's my worry, is that you don't have your Forbes, because that was where so much of your success came last year, was when Mackenzie would just go on a heater, and that literally won them the Pac-12 tournament last year. Like in the UCLA game that went to overtime, double overtime, whatever it was, that was crazy, and then the Stanford game as well.
Well, and to this point, and I'll get off, I promise. To this point, like, this is kind of the weird thing about the construction of the roster, because I don't think Forbes was really like a point guard last year.
No, I consider her more of a forward, like a three.
Yeah, and I think that was the weird thing, is like Talia kind of came in to be a point guard, and like, I talked to other coaches in the Pac-12 this offseason who point blank said to my face, like, she's going there to be a position that I don't think she can play. Mind you, these were teams and coaches that I talked to that recruited her in the portal and wanted her a lot. But they believed that the expectation was for her to go get a point guard. And so Forbes, I think, is in a role that maybe it's Kennedy Smith, but like, I don't know. I feel like they expended a lot of energy within the portal to get Kiki, which is totally understandable. But I don't really know where you get, like, I don't know where that 2-3 is. Like, I don't know who that star wing can kind of be, or like guard wing can be. I don't know.
I don't know if they have, like, I mean, again, that's where I feel like if you try and acclimate the freshman a little bit earlier, you can try and kind of grow them into that role. But that's a lot to ask, even from very highly touted recruits that they get. We'll see. I mean, look, Battle of LAs are coming up. I think Ohio State is still on deck for USC. Like,
we're gonna learn a lot in the next 2 weeks about what this team is, and we're either gonna come back here in 2 weeks and say we were wrong, or we're gonna come back in 2 weeks and say let's run back the tape. It's either or, and we, every analyst is wrong from time to time. Like, I don't live on this idea where you got to be married to your takes, for better or worse. Like, we could walk out of here today and they could beat Ohio State and UCLA and look great, and we could have that on our face, and that's fine. Like, there's no downside in that.
Yeah. I have no shame in being presented new information. But let's talk about. Really the initial highlight of the day was these jersey retirements. Asia Wilson and Caitlin Clark, both being retired at their respective schools, South Carolina and Iowa. I feel like there's an interesting kind of mirror in the roles that Caitlin Clark and Asia Wilson have played for their respective programs. Obviously, Iowa had some like more extensive history, like in like the 90s and whatnot, and obviously the state of Iowa and their history, but the kind of revitalization of the Iowa program, and then the way that South Carolina was just put on the map alongside, like when Don Staley getting Asia Wilson to stay home, and both of them staying home in order to do this. It's an interesting mirror of impact, and to see them celebrate on the same day, it really kind of like exemplified that to me. Like I think this conversation's kind of been had before in the dialogue, like kind of in the similarities of the situations in that way. But I mean, I guess just in general, like the takeaways, whether it be from their legacies that we've kind of touched on today in seeing these jersey retirements, or just kind of what are your takeaways from seeing Asia Wilson, who I'm not gonna lie, before they announced like they were retiring her jersey, I thought it was retired because she had a statue.
I couldn't believe that it happened.
I don't understand the PEMDAS there, but like shout out to Asia, it's well deserved. But yeah, just in general. And if you missed any of Asia's stuff, we had boots on the ground there. Shawnee is there. I know she's gonna be working on a piece here coming out soon, tomorrow? Question mark? I don't know about the way that Asia Wilson has impacted South Carolina basketball from a state perspective and Columbia and everything, which I'm super excited for. She was there at the game. So if you missed any of that, check out her Twitter. But Andrew, I'll lob it up to you. Just however you kind of want to take this. I'm open to whatever. There's a lot of legacy behind these two 22s.
I think if anything, I saw the Nike post today. Can you find that and put that up?
Let me get it for you.
Nike put up as either their profile picture on Instagram or a general post where it was 22 and it was Caitlin's 2 and Asia Wilson's 2. And I think a part of me felt a little sad about it because that type of collaboration and bridging is what it always should have been. And Nike should have been the one to lead the charge on that. There's a lot to be said about Nike from a business sense. For those that don't, read the trades or kind of follow in the news of sneaker culture. They got rid of their CEO this past summer because the guy just fundamentally did not understand the culture of Nike. And they brought in one of Phil Knight's OGs to come back in and bring them back and try and rediscover it. This is what it should have always been. Always. Nike's entire run from the moment they got Asia back on board to getting Caitlin on board, this should have been the exact way that they positioned their team in women's basketball. And instead, and look, I think there's some stuff to be said and some accountability that needs to be taken on some players' ends and their teams' ends and their fans' ends, and trying to create this idea of Caitlin versus Asia. And I understand that there's plenty of feelings surrounding that and things that were said or unsaid or subtweeted or whatever. But to me, Nike had the ability to create this from the beginning. And I think it makes me sad that today we're kind of online doing this idea of like whose was on TV and who's had the time and whose was more important and who has the motion, etc. And like we can have that on the fringes of fandom. I think that's fine. But we try to make what we are here a middle ground for a lot of this. And I think the bridging of eras here is just too fucking easy. You have a 28-year-old who's arguably at the peak of her powers and one of the best players in the history of the league. You have a very clear next best player in the league that is coming up and probably takes that mantle within the next couple of years. And 22 to 22 should have been the move. Like that should have been the way that we handled this from the beginning. And look, Nike didn't create this because, to be quite frank, up until this summer, Nike was fucking asleep at the wheel. And I would highly recommend for those that, again, aren't into the business of it like that. There's a phenomenal Business Insider piece about what has gone wrong with that company in the last couple of years and how much of a market share they have allowed other companies like Reebok and Adidas. Like you see Angel Reese with Reebok, you see Candace Parker taking over Adidas, you see the men's basketball side starting to make their way into inroads that Nike had. Hoka is like basically taken a big portion of Nike's sneaker, like running shoe share. And the way Nike's run their company has been shit. And it took until now for them to realize you have the two biggest women's basketball stars in the fucking world that wear the same damn number, that represent two of the best fan bases in the sport in Iowa and South Carolina. And all you have done is allow the circumstances to be created in which we create these fights over the two of them. And, some of that I think is on the W2 because I think that they wanted, and I think Kathy Engelbert wanted Bird Magic a little bit and didn't realize what came with it, and didn't realize the fact that there's a lot of nasty that was around then and came around now. But Nike had the ability to push these two together. And, maybe we'll find out in 5 years that one player or the other, or one person's team or the other, didn't want that and made sure it didn't happen. But until I know more than that, I'm laying it on the feet of Nike, because they are the shoe contract, and they had the ability to say, put your heads together. You both wear the same number. You both got the shoes. You both got all the interest. We're going to put you on the same damn billboard and make you guys our centerpieces, and I think I walk away from today just feeling a little bummed that this could have been a really great moment for the sport as a whole, had we played it right. Individually, for the teams and for the players, this is fantastic. They both mean so much to their own programs in very different ways. They are both, and this is like the funniest thing about the fights about the two of them, right? The analogies to them are very similar. They're both hometown kids. They both bucked major programs and stayed at home. They both led their programs to new heights, established new standards, took their talents into the WNBA, basically put their entire franchise on their backs. They did that for their individual teams, and they mirror each other in a lot of ways. And I feel that this was a great celebration for each of them, and they both deserve their singular moments. But I think this would have been a really cool time for the WNBA, especially to put it on the two of them, and make this a together thing, to establish the next era of women's basketball, collectively, in a way that I've been pushing for months and saying all this infighting is stupid, because at the end of the day, all the players are labor and they need to be united on this stuff instead of letting the labor get divided, amongst petty grievances. But to see the outpouring of support in Columbia and the outpouring of support at Carver Hawkeye really does reaffirm to me what each of them means to their programs, but it also reaffirms to me that women's basketball has hit that point again that is, it's culturally relevant in that way, and at a grassroots level too. Not to make it super macro, but most mainstream sports are not accessible to people in person in the same way anymore. Like a family of four going to an NFL or NBA game, that is hundreds of dollars of an investment before you get to concessions and everything else. And while these types of players are, they draw and command major tickets, like to get into Carver Hawkeye today wasn't cheap. Women's basketball as a whole is still an accessible product for people. And when you have stars like this and the accessibility, it creates what we're losing in a lot of other modern sports. And that's what I think is so cool about the influence that these two have had. They've made they've made women's basketball accessible to a major audience in ways that other people in the past just haven't. And that's cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Nike stuff is very well taken, because it could have all been so simple. With another 20.
Well, no,
that's a different conversation. But that's
real, not lumping swoops into the.
No. I understand. Yeah. I'm just it was right. You're not wrong. And you're not wrong. But the idea of that's
a situation, but that's a situation of a person not wanting it.
Right.
And that's on her, and
yeah,
I hope Swoops finds her piece, dog. I really do.
Yeah, it's a whole different.
As far as the two active athletes on Nike's roster,
yeah,
it's been there.
I'm with you.
It's absolutely been there, man.
Yeah,
and to Joe's point, they created fan bases. You know, like South Carolina, like Dawn, I think is kind of the star of the of South Carolina women's basketball as a coach, and that's not unheard of in college sports, right? I mean, Coach K did that at Duke. But Asia Wilson is the person that made it cool for South Carolina girls to go to South Carolina. She made it so that, if you're a kid from there, you stayed and went, right? And Caitlin's kind of done the same thing. Iowa girls, there's elementary school girls in Iowa that are playing basketball wanted to be Caitlin Clark.
I mean, we see Joyce and Malaysia right now on South Carolina's team. Like it's literally actively happening before our eyes. Like it's dope. It's cool. Today was a great example of like why this is awesome. Honestly, like for both teams and for the sport.
2-2, you need to celebrate it. You know, and Candace Parker kind of retired without the fanfare, and that's her right. You know, if you don't want the farewell tour, you don't have to have it. It appears that Diana Taurasi is going to do something similar when the time comes. She's just going to kind of ride off, and it'll be fine. I am glad we're able to do these things because as much as I am fine respecting the wishes of players that just want to walk away and do it without all of the pomp, I think the sport still needs it because we're in danger of losing the history of what came before. And you need the time to do that. You need the ability to celebrate players so we know who built this stuff. And we've had an alarming amount of players, especially in the early and mid 2000s, that just kind of left. And that's fine. But when they leave, you don't have the ability to celebrate them appropriately. And that to me is what worries me and why these types of things are important, because the history of what made this league goes back a long way, man. And, you know, we're 53 years from Title IX. And, you know, we're 40 years on the dot since Cheryl Miller won a national championship with USC. That's a long time. A lot of shit's happened in between. So making sure that Asia Wilson and making sure Caitlin Clark, you know, and Paige Beckers, when the time comes for her, making sure that they're celebrated and given that top billing to do so, it's important because people need to know it and they need to see it. And they need to always carry it with them, especially as the next group comes in. We talk about the next group of generational people that carry the torch forward for the sport.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you across the board. We're already at 50 minutes here, and we haven't even gotten into what woke everyone up this morning, and that was DeWanna Bonner headed to the Indiana Fever. Again, I said at the beginning of the show, it's been a great day for CCFC. This was the splash. This was the one, like, if you weren't moved by Natasha Howard, which I thought was a good pickup.
I wasn't.
But, like, I know you weren't. Like, it's a good pickup, but, like, you know, this is the one. This is the one. When you talk about people buying into what Indiana is selling, buying into the core of Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, and Aaliyah Boston, buying into Stephanie White as the head coach, and the changes they've made organizationally, being this is the staff, this is the GM, this is the core that is going to bring Indiana another championship. Having a player like DeWanna Bonner choosing to buy in this way when she could have just gone with AT. Like she could have just gone with her wife, and she didn't. And she chose Indiana, and it is, I mean, when you talk about like perfect fits of just like what they needed on either side of the ball, like, I mean, I don't know if you could think of, like, even though Satu was like the big name and the more long-term name, and like you're building kind of alongside your core, but when you talk about immediacy and you talk about wanting to contend this year, I think there's a very strong argument to make that DeWanna Bonner, if you could have picked any player and put them on this team outside of, like, you know, superstars, but like picked any player and dropped them on this team, DeWanna Bonner might have been the best possible fit for Indiana. And she goes there as a free agent. Don't even have to trade anything. Free agent. And you get DeWanna Bonner. I mean, I gave my thoughts already on here on YouTube earlier, my instant reaction. So where are you at with this? Because I'm incredibly moved by this one.
Yeah, I mean, before I get to like the personnel component, like this is a big piece of this. I think that WNBA fans, by and large, I love you all. I think people tend to project their values or their moral positions onto what they think players will do from a business sense. And the reality of the matter is, whatever feelings you have about Sophie Cunningham or Indiana fans or anything like that, dude, these women are competitors first and foremost. They want to win games. They want to leave a basketball legacy. They don't give a shit about a lot of the other stuff. And so to that end, it was always fugazi that, Indiana wasn't going to be able to get players to be around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. And even if they didn't, that's still an amazing core that you can wait till the cap spike next year to do. Before the trade to bring Satu to Phoenix, I was big on DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas going together because you needed someone to fit that wing spot and be basically the three there. Because what I had pictured was point guard, Copper, Bonner, Thomas, 5. Mm-hmm. And instead, what we get is Satu there to play the 3. And I don't think Bonner wants to be a bench player. I even at her age, I think she, just like AT, this team almost made it to the finals this past year. They know, I'm sure they got something left in the tank. Mm-hmm. I'm sure 1-year rental is fine. Yeah, you're splitting up with the you're splitting up co-parenting for a little bit, but they've been on record saying they're fine playing in different places if it meets their ends competitively. And the minute that Satu went to Phoenix, I went, And Thursday night, Rashard Hall puts in our group chat, DeWanna Bonner's got some smoke to Indiana. Lobo gets on the next day to the ESPN free agency special and says, we have to, Bonner to Indy's got smoke. And then we all collectively keep hearing within our chat, it's real. And then boom, it happens. And to me, the basketball fit of DeWanna Bonner there is so good because you have now a long, lanky primary defender against the hardest positions to guard in this league, which is that 6'2" to 6'4" wing player that, can play inside and shoot outside. You have an elite back to basket 5 in Aaliyah Boston. You've got Caitlin Clark. You've got Kelsey Mitchell. You've Sophie Cunningham, for all you want to say about her. Sophie's a good bench piece to have there. Lexi Hall's a good bench piece to have there. I think you still need somebody just as a rotational piece in the 4-5 spot because you've got Damiris Dantas, but I think you might need one more person to just kind of be a body.
I think that's where those second-round picks are probably going to come in,
I think
be my guess.
But you need another person, and you do also. You take away.
I hit on this in the video earlier. This is massive.
You take away 2 really good defenders from Caitlin too, because again, say what you want about Cunningham. Sophie's a good defender as well. So you take away 2 very pesky defenders, and I think that matters a lot here, man. I mean, I think that this team becomes a title contender, not prohibitive,
right? There's a key difference here.
But the ceiling of this team, finals now, easily. Mm-hmm. Caitlin Clark with a whole off season off to finally recharge a year of off season work. Kelsey Mitchell back, Aaliyah Boston and her, and now you've got Steph White coaching this team, who DB already has familiarity with and knows what the system requires. And DB still got a little bit left in the tank too. And this is the other thing that I want to touch on with DeWanna Bonner. She was asked to be essentially their number 1 scoring option in Connecticut, especially come the playoffs. The discussion was always Alyssa Thomas with the Labrams has scoring limitations, especially past 3 feet in the playoffs. So you're laying a lot of that at the feet of DeWanna Bonner and praying to God Marina Mabry can pick up the slack. Bro, your 4th scoring option. 4th scoring option is DeWanna Bonner now.
Ridiculous.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
That might be, and the reason I say finals, a team that could be a finals team is give me the 3 finals contenders that you could think of. Bonner's probably as good, if not better, than their 4th scoring option.
Mm.
I think the Liberty are probably still sitting there at the top, because you'd have, Stewie, Jonquel, Sabrina, Phoebich, probably
/ Laney, which
Laney
kind of on the night. Yeah,
the aces are probably in this tier now, where you have Asia, Jackie, Chelsea, and Jewel Lloyd, Phoenix maybe, Atlanta maybe,
Seattle,
because
Minnesota,
Seattle, Minnesota, obviously. I think they're like a greater, like a sum.
Yeah, it's not like a
the whole is greater than the sum, right?
Yeah.
But dude, Indiana just turned in, at least from a starting five perspective, Indiana just turned into one of the most complete teams in the WNBA.
Yeah.
I even though it's probably just a 1-year rental, because I have a feeling, however crazy this free agency is next year with the cap spike is going to be fucking bananas.
I'm never going to be allowed to leave my desk.
No, like panic room.
This is.
But it's such a coup for them, man. And from a perception standpoint too, like I said, I think it was always bullshit that, free agents aren't going to want to go to play with her, but to have DeWanna Bonner, especially, who came from the team that arguably had the most perceived problems with Indiana, to come over after the series that was, and the kind of pseudo rivalry stuff that we saw from them all regular season, to me, that matters a lot within like how fans and media perceive this. I don't think it goes that far with players, but I think as far as fans and media and wondering, is there enough here for them to want, for them to be able to convince people? Even for a year, you just got it.
Hey, and this is before the facility too, like their actual facility. So like that's on the way. The cap spike's on the way. Like this, to me, in my eyes, like if you're already here, like assuming it doesn't just go like disastrously, which I don't expect.
It's not.
I don't think that's going to happen.
DB, because here's the thing about DB. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go.
DB has always been extremely complimentary of Caitlin. You go back to the quotes from All-Star, like among all of the people that have shaded her this past year, DB has been one of the ones that I have noticeably seen very effusive in their praise of her. So that I think will be fine. But continue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, to me, it's like, so like even if this is the 1-year rental, right? And like let's just say like that is what happens. Which I think a lot of these players, like just across the W, like that is what's going. I don't think that's an Indiana problem. That is the CBA's up. I'm trying to go make some money problem. But if this is like the floor of your signings, is being able to get Natasha Howard and DeWanna Bonner in this way. If this is the floor, and this is before the facility, this is before the cap spike, like this is like the potential for the signings to come in future years. And again, if assuming that this is the trajectory, I mean, the sky's the limit, frankly, with what they can try and build around Caitlin and Aaliyah in Indiana. Obviously, like you have Kelsey Mitchell also kind of on that rental-ish contract, but I feel a lot more comfortable. Like I felt like if she was leaving, it kind of felt like it was gonna be this year. Like it felt like it was gonna be through the core. So like I feel a whole lot better now about like just the longevity of Kelsey Mitchell in Indiana. Just from kind of whatever the dialogue and was around her wanting to leave in that way. But I mean, if you're Indiana, like, and I know you had kind of talked about this in your Vibe article a little bit, but like you trade number 8 with Nalissa to then have room. Like obviously you get Sophie in that trade, which is a great piece, but you're also making room for these moves. And you don't protect Temi in the expansion draft, which we were confused about at the beginning, but then we hear we got something in the work. Like, we got something in the plans. Yeah, I believe you. I believe you now. So like they, in that way, like, I mean, what a win. Like, I mean, just across the board, like even with the number 8 pick, which I understand, like having the rookie contract control is very nice, but like, bro, you just got DeWanna Bonner. Like,
yeah, you're not getting a better player than DeWanna Bonner at 8, first and foremost. And also, and I don't know if I wrote about this in that Vibe piece, which, by the way, no cap space, WBB.com. We are constantly updating that with free agent signings. So if you go and look at the ESPN free agency tracker, that's broken up by transaction time, which can be a little confusing because you don't know which person is going to what team. We break it up by team. So we make it a lot easier for you to find where things are, and then we'll have updates attached to the bottom of each to let you know kind of how we're progressing. So, keep an eye on that and always have that. It's pinned to the front of our page for you to find it. But the number 8 pick was the price of moving Nalissa Smith. Contract in the player was not movable. They had been trying to do it for over a year. And at the end of the day, you had to do something to sweeten the pot. I'm sure they wouldn't have wanted to give away that 8, but that's the only way they were going to get Smith off their books. And to be honest, I think it worked out for everyone.
Yep.
It's a clear upgrade for the Fever. They get DB. She ends up in Dallas. She's reunited with DeWanna. And, Chris Koklanis, who's a defensive first guy, and hopefully can get the most out of her. And, the two of them, I hope them the best. And, she needed a change of scenery, clearly. And look, for Dallas in that end, it's pretty clearly page or bust. I think that's where we're at now. Their front court's pretty filled out. Maisha Hines-Allen was signed there. And so now you have Smith, McCowan, Hines-Allen, Siegrist. Maddie Siegrist is in there. You've got a lot of complementary pieces at the guard spot. It's pretty clear they're throwing.
They're in every page.
Yeah, they are. They basically. I give Kurt Miller a lot of credit. We'll do like a bigger free agency update thing and ball up top. But I will say I give Kurt Miller a lot of credit here because I think the discussion was Dallas does not have shit to convince this girl to want to go. They do.
They do now. Absolutely.
If she adds to that, and you now have a roster construction that is, Paige, Arike, hold on, let me go find let me just pull my thing up real quick.
Paige,
Paige, Ty Harris, DeWanna, Nalissa Smith, T-Mac, pick 12 now. You also are likely there's pick 8 went elsewhere, but they have pick 12. You can get a wing probably at that price point. It's a competitive team.
I think towards the top of the second round as well, if I'm not mistaken. For them, I could be wrong on that, but regardless,
12 pick.
Okay.
What they've gotten, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but there's a lot of movable assets and a lot of good shit there. They did what they did to make it competitive for her. So, dude, this has been a crazy week. I mean, we've gotten great college games. We've gotten big upsets. I mean, this wasn't the only major upset of the week. Oregon got absolutely obliterated by Michigan today, but they beat Michigan State. Illinois beat Maryland today. You ended up with Vanderbilt lost today. Your Sooners are unfortunately behind Kentucky in that respect.
Missouri was close to Tennessee in a different SEC game.
That game was close. We have free agency moves out the wazoo. I mean, it's been a great week of women's basketball, man. This is exactly what we're looking for. Washington's beating Ohio State right now, and we have an amazing week coming up too. Stay tuned with us on No Cap Space. I don't want to take the victory lap, bro, but there's been a lot of hits and not a lot of misses on us in free agency. Our plugs have been plugged in and our hunches have been good. And so we hope that you subscribe to us, subscribe to the Substack, tell your friends to subscribe, and, just hang with us, man, because we got our people, and our people haven't steered us in the wrong way yet. So before we go real quick, I will answer this one question. To me, I love this as a stabilizing piece for Connecticut, getting Tina Charles, just because Tina is, she was drafted by the Sun in 2010. That's essentially her home franchise. She's probably going to retire there, but it is a good message to the unsettled vets that you have, like a Natasha Cloud, who just got traded there, to be like, look, you're not going to go 0-40. We're going to get you something. Now, something is not great, but it is better than nothing. And it's very clear they're going all in on a rebuild. So
Tank Commander Tina.
Yeah, I'm feeling it. Tank for Juju. Speaking of this, Mr. Ghost, hang with us. There's
oh shit. Hey, it's a big month for No Cap Space. I've been telling y'all all the draft free agency.
Stuff on Juju's coming.
It's been a big month for No Cap Space. It's gonna be a big month for No Cap Space. There's an announcement or two on the way. We'll leave it at that. So just be on the lookout. Week or like 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Look, man. It's a fun time. It's a fun time for No Cap Space. It's a fun time in women's basketball. Thank you all for tapping in with us for this weekend wrap. Again, this was supposed to be about jersey retirements, and it turned into a top number 4 team being upset in a crazy game in a crazy atmosphere. But hey, man, that's what college basketball is all about. Is that right there? So thank y'all for tapping in. Make sure you go check out Home Field. Link in the description below. Use code NOCAP15. Use the link in the description below as well. A bunch of incredible women's basketball merch to look forward to. Subscribe here, like Andrew said. Subscribe on NoCapSpaceWBB.com so you don't miss out on any content coming from No Cap Space. If there's any more news, we'll be here. But for the meantime, Ball Up Top, Tuesday morning, podcast, your favorite platforms, NoCapSpaceWBB.com. Every week, we're going to dive into free agency. There's a lot to talk about. So I'm sure we're going to dive into a whole lot of stuff. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll see y'all next time.